Since my parents are moving into this high-rise, you should just go back to your parents' house. What do you mean? I can't just head back to my parents' house on short notice, it's too far. Quiet. Just leave. Are you saying this is my fault? Of course it is. Anyone who kicks their parents out is definitely wrong. I've always consulted with you about your parents up until now, haven't I? You've gone too far. I can't stay with someone who doesn't respect their parents. We're getting a divorce. I did indeed kick his parents out of our house. But that was because they were acting too freely in our home. And my husband knew about it. So why do I have to be the bad guy? I've reached my limit. Fine. But give me some time to pack my things. I can take all my stuff, right? If you left it here, it would just be in the way. Do whatever you want. I'm going to stay in a hotel for a while, so get out in 2 or 3 days. It seems I can do whatever I want with my things. Well then, I'll just have to do that. And he'll surely regret it once I'm gone. I'm 30 years old and work in real estate. My salary includes a base pay plus incentives. I've done quite well, so I earn more than most people my age. My husband, George, has been working hard in a restaurant and is about to go independent. Since he's in the middle of working as a trainee in the restaurant, his income isn't very high, to be honest. George seems to be concerned about this. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. What do you mean? Well, I can't take you to nice places or buy you things. And now, I'm practically crashing at your place. You have your goal of owning your restaurant, right? Don't worry about it now. Repay me when you achieve your dream. Looks like I'll be in your debt forever. I love my husband for his dedication to his goals, and I'm not worried about money since I have my income. After a while, George is finally ready to open his restaurant. His parents, Helen and Ken, are quite proud of him. George is finally opening his dream restaurant. He's worked hard for this. I am proud of my husband for achieving his goal. He seems proud too. One day, as the restaurant's opening progresses, George makes a suggestion. Hey, with the restaurant opening, I think our income will increase. How about we move? Yeah, that makes sense. This place was originally just a slightly larger one-bedroom, so it might be the perfect opportunity to move. So, I was thinking, why don't we move into a really big house? What do you mean? Can you afford the rent? Let's not rent it, let's buy the place. And not just any place, a luxurious condo. I've always dreamed of making my restaurant a success and living in a place like that. Before the restaurant has even opened? I'm going to work hard and make a lot of money to give you an easy life. Well, if you work hard, and with our combined incomes, we can just manage it. Exactly, my successful real estate agent. All right. But I'll be the one to pick the property, okay? No complaints later. I know. I'll leave it all to the pro. George suddenly wants to live in a luxurious place. He's probably always dreamed of it, and with the upcoming opening and loans, he's feeling ambitious. He seems confident about the restaurant's success. I'm not entirely keen on buying a luxury condo. But rejecting his idea might demotivate him. So I reluctantly agree to buy the mansion. Hey, I'm thinking we should go for this condo. Could you take a look at the property details for me? I might not understand much about it, but this is the one you want, right? It's a high-rise, less than 10 years old, and the price is just around $2 million. Among the options we can afford, I think it's a good one. A $2 million high-rise, huh? Guess I gotta buckle down. Since George seemed to be on board, I went ahead with the purchase process for the high-rise. And since George's income from his soon-to-open restaurant wouldn't be enough for the loan approval, I put the loan in my name. We did it! The dream high-rise! Hey, don't get too excited like a kid. George was thrilled about moving to the high-rise. I can't say I wasn't excited too. However, this move gradually started to throw our lives off track. After moving into the high-rise, we invited George's parents over to show them the place. Their house is close, so they could come over easily. On the other hand, my parents live far away, so showing them the house would have to wait. What a lovely home! Yeah, it's impressive. George's parents, Helen and Ken, praised our new home. But then, I heard something from them that bothered me. George really worked hard. Keep it up. Worked hard? Keep it up? I was the one who handled the paperwork and the down payment. George had almost nothing to do with buying this house, right? I was a bit bothered by Helen and Ken's words, but since George and I would be paying off the loan together, and it was his house too, I decided not to sweat the small stuff. Helen, Ken, come on in. We're here again today. Sorry for always dropping by. No, it's fine. Maybe because they were happy their son was living nearby, Helen and Ken started visiting our house frequently. How's the restaurant prep going? Right on schedule. We're opening in 2 weeks. Can't wait. That's exciting. Since Helen and Ken's house was close, they started coming over on weekdays in the evening for dinner, and on weekends they'd spend the whole day. The frequency felt a bit much, and they stayed for long hours, but I thought they'd stop coming to the house and instead going to the restaurant once it opened. That was just 2 weeks away, so I decided to bear with it. 2 weeks later, George's restaurant opened without a hitch. It was a moderately sized cafe that became quite popular right away. Restaurants often struggle at the start, but his was doing well, thankfully. However, Helen and Ken were still coming over as usual. Helen? George is still at the restaurant. George seemed so busy, I didn't want to bother him. So, I thought we'd wait for him here. Oh, I see. George usually came home late. So by the time he got back and we spent some time together, it was too late for Helen and Ken to go home, and they started staying over. We had spare rooms, so it wasn't a problem for them to stay. But the fact that they were coming over so often and even starting to stay over was starting to bother me. I'm home. Ah, welcome back. You're early today. Yeah, I've gotten used to the work. Sales are going well, too. About 6 months after George's restaurant opened, he seemed to have gotten the hang of it and started coming home earlier. He also began buying things for his parents more often and giving them money. Here, Mom, this is for you. And Dad, this one's for you. Crafting tools, huh? A razor for me? Did you go out of your way to buy these while busy? I ordered them online since I couldn't go shopping. It must be that his restaurant is thriving, allowing him to do this. But if the restaurant is doing well, I wish he'd contribute a bit more to our household finances. George only gives me $2,000 a month, which doesn't even cover half of our monthly expenses. Maybe he's just trying to make up for not being able to do much for his parents when he was earning less. I decided to keep quiet about it for a while. George, there's something I want to buy. Got it. Will $600 be enough? Thank you. A year has passed since the restaurant opened, but nothing has changed with George. He's still giving his parents money and things, and the amount he contributes to the house remains the same. But it's still okay since I have my income. The real issue is his parents. Ah, I'm beat today. Welcome home. Helen? You surprised me. Is George back already? The restaurant should still be open, right? George gave me a key. Now I can come and go freely, even when you two aren't here. A key? I didn't hear anything about this from George. Is that so? George had apparently given his parents a key so they could enter our house whenever they wanted. And one of the spare rooms had become their personal room. Since Ken is off on weekends, they've made it a habit to stay from Friday until Sunday evening. And Helen, being a homemaker, sometimes comes over on weekdays too. It's almost like we're living together. I finally had to confront George about this. Why did you give them a key without asking me? They come over often. It's a hassle to always check with us, isn't it? They have their own room, they're always staying over. It's practically like they're living with us. What's the problem? Isn't it easier for you with Mom helping out around the house? It's true that Helen helps with the housework, making things easier for me. But when it's just Helen and me, she often criticizes me. Aren't you coming home too late? As a wife, you don't have time for housework. I'm sorry, I've been busy with work. Using work as an excuse. George is working hard, you should just quit your job. Does Helen know how much George actually earns? The restaurant is doing well, but his income alone isn't enough to live on, is it? To someone living with their in-laws, these might seem like minor complaints. But coming home exhausted from work, wondering whether Helen and Ken are at our house, and nervously opening the front door is quite a burden. Ken, too, does whatever he pleases around our house. Ken, that's my cheese. Ah, sorry about that. I didn't realize. I told you to let me know when you're eating something with my name on it, remember? Yeah, I forgot. I didn't see your name on it. That day, my eagerly awaited gourmet cheese got eaten. I always look forward to my evening snack, and I'm particular about my nibbles. Ken often eats my special snacks without asking, even though I started labeling them with my name. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Ken, please put on some clothes. I always walk around like this after a bath because it's hot. Maybe at your house, but could you please not do that here? Don't be so uptight. We're family, aren't we? If you don't want to see, just look away. Ken has a habit of wandering around the house naked after his bath. No matter how hard I try to look away, I sometimes can't help but see him. I really wish he wouldn't do that in our house. 2 years have passed since George's restaurant opened. When are you going to quit your job? Well, I'll think about it. This scallop can is delicious. Can you buy it again? That was a limited edition, but I'll find something else. No matter how much I explain my job situation to Helen, she doesn't understand, and Ken does whatever he wants in the house. George just brushes it off, so I gave up and stopped saying anything. But my silence only made Helen and Ken's behavior more unrestrained. I'm home. Welcome back. Huh? The curtains have changed. They're nice, right? The old ones were too plain, so I thought these would be better. The living room carpet is different too. I bought that too. Pretty, isn't it? Helen started changing our home's interior decor without asking. It's my house, after all. And that wasn't the only surprise. Huh? This room was just for storage. Oh, that room. I turned it into my crafting space. Despite already having their own room, Helen made another room into her hobby space. Ah, that was refreshing. Ken continued his habit of walking around naked after his bath. Now, he's even started standing in the living room where the air conditioner hits, hands on hips, cooling off in the nude. Even when I ask George to talk to them. They're my parents. Let them have a little freedom. How is this just a little freedom? How long will this continue? How much more will it escalate? The thought alone made me shudder. A year later, 3 years after George's restaurant opened. Ah, what a great bath. I had resigned myself to George and his parents' behavior and said nothing, but after 3 years, I decided to speak up again. Ken, I've asked before, but could you please wear clothes after your bath in this house? Oh. But it's hot. Even so, I'd like you to wear something. Is it really such a big deal? George and I are father and son. We have pretty much the same, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. Ken tried to brush off my serious request with a joke, while standing there naked. After 3 years of patience, my frustration finally exploded. Don't joke around. Don't you understand it's rude to walk around naked in someone else's house? I lost my temper and yelled at Ken. Ken was taken aback by my outburst, and Helen chimed in. What's going on? Why are you raising your voice? Ah, she's mad at me for not wearing clothes after a bath. Clothes? That's trivial. Are you really getting mad over that? My anger wasn't just about Ken not wearing clothes. It was the accumulation of Helen and Ken doing as they pleased in our home, and George letting them get away with it. This was not something to be dismissed as trivial. So, Helen, you don't understand why I'm upset? How can I understand when you suddenly start yelling? Enough. Please leave. Hey. Don't push me like that. Okay. I'll leave, so just let me get dressed. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I kicked Helen and Ken out of our house. A few hours later, George came home. It's Friday, isn't it? Aren't Mom and Dad here? I sent them away. What? Why? I explained why I had kicked his parents out. And I also expressed my frustration about their behavior and his lack of support. I hoped this would help him understand how troubled I was, but... You got mad at my parents over that? Over that? Turning a spare room into their personal hobby space and wandering around the house naked, you call that just that? In our family home, nobody would complain about that. You might not mind because they're your family, but you should consider my feelings too. Are you saying my parents aren't your family? It's not about that. If someone's uncomfortable, you should at least try to be considerate, or we could have discussed rules. Making rules for every little thing? Forget it. George cut our conversation short and headed for the door. I heard him talking on the phone, probably calling somewhere. After a while, he came back. My parents and I are going to live in this high-rise, so you can go back to your parents' house. What do you mean? I can't just go back to my parents' house like that. It's too far. Quiet. Just get out. Are you saying I'm the one at fault? Of course. Whoever kicks their parents out is wrong. I always consulted with you about your parents, didn't I? You've gone too far. I can't be with someone who doesn't care about their parents. We're getting a divorce. I did kick his parents out. But it was because they were doing whatever they wanted in our house. And George knew about it. Yet, why do I have to be the bad one? I've reached my limit. Fine. But give me some time to pack my things. I can take all my stuff, right? Even if you left it, it would just be in the way. Do whatever you want. I'm going to stay in a hotel for a while, so get out in 2 or 3 days. It seems I can do whatever I want with my belongings. Well then, I'll just do that. And he'll surely regret it once I'm gone. The next day, I packed my belongings, arranging for a moving company to take away the items I couldn't carry. Please take these items from here and there, and also from this room. After sorting everything out, I decided to stay in a business hotel temporarily until I found a new place to live. The items I couldn't transport were crammed into a storage unit. 3 days later, George called me, yelling, "Hey! The house is empty." It's not empty. The curtains, carpet, and the crafting room stuff are still there, right? There's hardly anything left to use. Just a dining table and a TV. How am I supposed to live like this? I left the things we bought after moving in. Most of the other furniture and appliances were from my old place, so they are mine. You said I could do whatever I wanted with my things. Ever since you kicked my parents out, I thought you were terrible. George hung up angrily. My revenge wasn't over yet. There was more to come. I continued staying at the business hotel for about 2 weeks before renting a small apartment and starting to live alone. Around that time, the divorce proceedings began in earnest. George was fully intent on divorcing, and I had been considering it too, so the process went smoothly. We agreed that George would keep the high-rise apartment. I'm going to live with my parents in that high-rise, so I'll take it. Okay, that's fine. I'm alone, so it's not a problem. George already had a successful business and a steady income. He probably didn't want to lose the prestige of living in a high-rise as a business owner. If he's happy with that, let him be. I can even handle the paperwork for him. In exchange for the high-rise, I decided to take most of our savings and the car. George must have been pleased to get the high-rise. But I expected he'd contact me in a panic within a month. Sure enough, a month later, he called in a frenzy. Hey! What's this about? What do you want, calling all of a sudden? There's a withdrawal of $6,000 for the loan payment. Isn't that way too high? Is this payment for several months combined? No way. That's the monthly repayment amount. What? Aren't house loans supposed to be around $2,000 a month? That's what I heard. I don't know what kind of houses people around you live in, but that high-rise cost $2 million. It's natural that the payments would be that high. It's different from the $30,000 to $40,000 you borrowed for your shop. So, you thought giving me $2,000 a month would be enough? You've been paying this loan all this time? Yes, but you didn't know. You just handed over $2,000 a month and never bothered with household expenses. I can't afford this amount. Well, that's how it is. George's restaurant was thriving, but his take-home pay was around $6,000. A $6,000 monthly income from a personal restaurant is respectable. However, it's not enough to pay the loan for the high-rise. His monthly take-home pay might be $6,000, but his restaurant's monthly revenue was in the hundreds of dollars. He might have mistaken handling small money for being rich. But if George wants to continue living in that style, he'll need to make 2 to 3 more restaurants thrive, which is the reality. Not something he can manage immediately. The loan is for 35 years, and there are 32 years left. You'll have to work hard to pay it off. That's impossible. Restaurant income is unstable, and my dad's factory job doesn't pay much. And now, 32 more years of this. I might have to give up the high-rise. That's the only choice, but even if you sell it, your troubles will continue. What do you mean? Originally, high-rise luxury apartments are meant for the wealthy. The wealthy prefer new properties, so a high-rise that's over 10 years old might not sell easily. But it's not like it won't sell at all, right? Unlike houses, the value of a condo mostly comes from the building itself, not the land. Did you know that the value of a building drops much faster than land? Have you ever heard that when selling an old house, you often get only the value of the land? Even if you manage to sell that high-rise, you'll probably still have a loan in the hundreds of $1,000s left to pay. This is one of the reasons why it's said you shouldn't overstretch to buy a luxury high-rise place. Many of today's high-rises and million-dollar condominiums are becoming ghost buildings. The era of unconditionally admiring high-rises is over, and many people regret buying them. I wonder why George was so enamored with high-rises at this time. My reluctance to buy the high-rise at first was due to this very reason. Why did you buy a high-rise that's over 10 years old? You were the one who insisted on a $1 million place. It's not easy to find a good property that's new and also worth $2 million. Plus, when we bought it, I wasn't thinking about divorce, so I prioritized a place where we would live long-term. Even if I sell it, I'll still have the loan left. What should I do? You wanted the high-rise, and you hastily took it on without thinking it through, so it's your own doing. I'm not involved anymore. Goodbye. Wait. I ignored George's continued pleas and hung up the phone. Knowing George was suffering made me feel a bit relieved. I was quite satisfied with how things turned out. Just when I thought that, I received a call from Helen. Hello, we were wrong. We apologize and will reflect on our actions, so please come back. You three should live happily together. I have no intention of coming back. Don't say that. George just wanted to show off a bit to us. Helen's words were perplexing. George showing off to his own parents? What is she talking about? What do you mean by showing off? Well, George lied to us that he was paying for most of the house loan and the living expenses. What? That's news to me. I finally understood. His parents praised George for buying the high-rise, and Helen told me to quit my job because George had lied to them that he was providing most of the living expenses. It's clear that George likes to show off, but I never imagined he would do it to his own family. What was the point of that? No matter the reason, I have no plans to return. Don't be like that. Can't you help us out in some way? What do you mean by help? You work for a real estate company, right? Isn't there some kind of trick so we can keep living in the high-rise? If you know something, tell us. There's no convenient trick like that. Disgusted, I hung up the phone. Following this pattern, a call from Ken was expected. Seeing Ken's name on the caller ID, I immediately thought of him standing naked in front of the air conditioner. Shuddering with disgust, I didn't answer Ken's call and just hung up. Having dealt with all three of them, I was sure there would be no more calls. Finally, I could start a peaceful life. Later, George's family, unable to pay the loan, sold the high-rise and moved into a small apartment. The sale of the high-rise left them with a debt of about $300,000. George had some money borrowed for his business. Combined, George's debt was over $400,000. To repay it, George's strategy was to cut staff and make Helen work in the restaurant. Helen had no experience working in a restaurant. Mistakes in orders and slow service became routine, and the restaurant's reputation dropped. Along with its revenue. George's actions backfired. Ken was also helping to repay George's debt, but he was nearing retirement. A bleak future awaited George. Freed from my ex-husband's family, I could live freely and comfortably. My work was going well, and every day was fulfilling.